Good morning. I've got my coffee. It's one of those Florida mornings where the humidity hasn't quite woken up yet, and the backyard looks actually nice before it turns into a wall of warm air. So I'm making the most of it. I want to talk about the first year, my first year of retirement, which officially started March 31st, 2023, when I drove home from the physical therapy clinic with a grocery store cake on the passenger seat and absolutely no idea what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I'm 67 years old. I retired after 46 years of work, and I'm living on $27.50 a month. And the thing that hit me hardest in year one wasn't the money at all. It was the inside of it. That's what I want to tell you before you get there, or while you're in it, because I really do think it helps to know. And I don't think I'm the only one. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think a lot of people plan the financial side of retirement pretty carefully and then show up at the door of the actual thing and go, oh, I did not plan for this part. I planned for the money. I did not plan for the Monday morning when the money is fine and I still don't know what to do with myself. The part I didn't plan for was the inside of it. The day-to-day experience of being a person who used to have somewhere to be and now doesn't. The emotional stuff, the time stuff, the loneliness stuff, the weird guilt about the television. I didn't have a plan for any of that, and it hit me harder than I expected, in ways I want to try to describe, because I think describing it might be more useful than the version where I skip straight to the part where I figured it out. So that's what I want to talk about today. Here's what I actually thought retirement was going to feel like. I thought it was going to feel like vacation. I know that sounds naive, but I had been working since I was 19 years old, 46 years without a real break. And in my head, retirement was just a permanent version of that feeling at the end of a workday when you can finally put everything down. That relief feeling, but ongoing. You wake up and the day is yours. Nobody needs anything from you. Nothing is due. Nothing is scheduled. You can do whatever you want. And for the first month, that was more or less what it felt like. It was genuinely lovely. I slept until I felt like waking up. I sat on my back porch with my coffee, and I didn't rush anywhere. I called Shelley on a Tuesday afternoon just to talk, which I never used to be able to do on a Tuesday afternoon. I started a little garden in the backyard. It was good. And then month 2 arrived. And somewhere in month 2, I stopped feeling like I was on vacation and started feeling like, I don't know how to describe it exactly, like I was waiting for something that wasn't coming. Like there was supposed to be a next thing and there wasn't a next thing. Like I'd been running hard in one direction for 46 years and suddenly stopped, and all that momentum had nowhere to go and was just sort of sitting in my chest doing nothing. That's not what I expected at all. And I didn't know how to talk about it because from the outside everything was fine. I was fine. I'd made it to retirement. I had my Social Security, I had my pension, my house was paid off, Shelley was 45 minutes away. By every metric I had planned for, I had done it. And I was spending my Tuesdays watching TV shows I didn't even like and feeling guilty about it. My dad, his name was Stanley Kowalski, a union man who worked the tire plant in Akron for most of his life. My dad retired at 62. And I was in my 30s when it happened, so I watched it from a distance. And what I remember thinking was, he seems fine. Like he just kind of shifted into a lower gear and kept going. He fished, he watched baseball, he puttered around the garage with things that didn't necessarily need puttering. He lived another 14 years after he retired, and as far as I could tell, he was content through most of them. I thought that's how it worked. You retire, you relax, you find your version of fishing. What I did not understand, watching my dad from my 30s, was that he had something I didn't have at the start of retirement. He knew who he was when the work stopped. He'd been figuring that out quietly for years. He had his things, the garage, the games, my mom, the Saturday morning ritual at the diner on Route 8. He had a shape to his days before the retirement happened. He just swapped out the job part. I didn't have that shape. I had the job part, and I didn't know what was underneath it. The last day at the clinic, March 31st, my coworkers got me that cake. It said, "Happy Retirement, Linda," in that blue grocery store frosting. They signed a card. I hugged everyone. I drove home. And I sat in my backyard with a piece of cake and I thought, okay, now what? That's the moment. That's when I understood that I had planned for the money, but not for the after. The now what? So I want to go through 5 things that the first year actually looked like. Not the highlight reel, the actual thing. Things I wish someone had specifically told me before I walked out with that cake. The first thing, the crash is real, and it usually arrives in month 2 or 3. Not for everyone. I know some people who retired and were completely fine almost immediately. My brother Gary is convinced he's going to be one of those people. He calls me every Sunday asking retirement questions, and he's 2 years out from doing it himself. And every time I try to tell him about the crash, he kind of nods politely like he knows I mean well, but it won't happen to him. Gary, if you're watching this, and you're not subscribed, so you probably aren't, I'm talking to you. The crash, when it came for me, was not dramatic. It wasn't depression. It wasn't a breakdown. It was quieter and weirder than that. It was more like a low-grade aimlessness that settled into the house and didn't seem to want to leave. Days that started fine and sort of lost their shape by noon. Evenings that felt too long. A vague sense that I was doing something wrong with my time, even when I couldn't say what I should be doing instead. By month 3, I was watching television I didn't care about just to have noise in the room. Game shows. A cooking competition I had no opinion about. Just something on. Because something on felt better than the quiet. And what made it harder was that nobody had told me this was normal. I'd read books about retirement. I'd talked to people who were retired. And they all talked about how great it was, or how they stayed busy, or what trips they were planning. Nobody said, "Hey, Linda, around month 2 or 3, you might feel like your life has misplaced its outline and you can't find where it went." That part was not in any of the books. That's when I figured out that the emotional first year and the financial first year are 2 completely different things. And the financial one has a lot of planning resources. The emotional one mostly doesn't. The second thing is something I'm a little embarrassed to admit, which means it's probably the most useful thing I'll say. I didn't understand how much of my identity was attached to being someone who had somewhere to be. I don't mean this in a philosophical way. I mean it in a very practical Tuesday morning way. For 46 years, I had a place to go, and that place needed me to be there. The dental practice, for 34 years, needed me to open the office at 8 in the morning and make sure the schedule worked and keep everything running smoothly. I was the person who held that together. I knew where things were. I knew how things worked. People asked me things and I knew the answers. And then March 31st came and nobody needed me anywhere. I went to the grocery store on a Tuesday morning about 3 weeks into retirement. Just a regular Publix run, nothing special about it. And I remember standing in the produce section and having this weird feeling that something was wrong. Like I was doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing. Like I was skipping something. It took me a few minutes to realize what it was. I was at the grocery store on a Tuesday at 10 in the morning, and my whole body still thought I was supposed to be at work. 46 years of Tuesday mornings at work. My nervous system hadn't gotten the update yet. It was still running the old schedule. I stood there in the produce section for a little too long holding a bag of apples and kind of laughing at myself. And the laughing was real, but the weird feeling underneath it was also real. It's a strange thing to feel like you're somewhere you're not supposed to be when you're in a grocery store on a Tuesday morning and there is literally nowhere you are supposed to be instead. That's the kind of thing that's hard to explain to someone who hasn't felt it. But I think a lot of people who've retired recognize exactly what I'm describing. It took longer than I expected for that feeling to go away. I don't fully understand why, but the body seems to have its own retirement adjustment schedule that is not the same as the calendar one. Mine took about 4 or 5 months. Some days I still feel a small version of it when I'm out somewhere during hours that used to be work hours. And I've been retired for a year and a half. The third thing, The money watching is different from just having less money. I'm just going to tell you the real numbers here because I think it's more useful than being vague about it. My income in retirement is about $2,750 a month. That's my Social Security. I started at 66, which got me $2,140 a month, plus the small pension from my years at the dental practice, which is $610 a month. That's it. That's the whole income. My expenses run about $1,340 a month, give or take. HOA fees, utilities, groceries, Medicare supplement, car insurance, the phone, streaming services, all of it. So I have roughly $1,400 left over every month after fixed expenses. Some months that's comfortable. Some months it disappears faster than I expect and I'm doing the math on the back of an envelope. But here's what surprised me about the money piece. It wasn't the amount that was the hardest part. It was the watching. When I was working, money came in on a schedule every 2 weeks, the paycheck, and money went out, and sometimes more went out than was comfortable, but there was always another paycheck coming. There was always a next influx. In retirement, there's no next influx. What's there is what's there. And that changes how you think about every purchase in a way I wasn't prepared for. I found myself doing calculations at the store that I never used to do. Standing in the cereal aisle comparing prices, not because I had to, but because something in me had switched into this constant, low-level monitoring mode. Shelley noticed it before I did. She came over for lunch about 4 months in, and I was doing this thing where I was mentally tracking everything she ate because I was worried about what groceries had cost. And she looked at me and said, "Mom, you're fine. Eat the sandwich." She was right. I was fine. But I had to actively practice being fine for a while before it became natural. That's the part nobody warned me about. The money anxiety of retirement isn't just about whether you have enough. It's about adjusting to a completely different relationship with money than you've had for your entire adult life. The fourth thing is one I still don't completely understand, so I'm just going to describe it and you can make of it what you will. I missed work in a way I didn't expect to miss it. And I want to be precise about this because I didn't miss the job. The physical therapy clinic was fine, but it was not the great love of my professional life. I wasn't lying awake missing the filing system. What I missed was the rhythm, the structure, the feeling of knowing exactly what the day was for before it started. For 46 years, I had that. Every morning, I knew what was happening. I knew what was needed. I knew what time to be where and what to do when I got there. And there's something about that kind of structure, even when the structure is imposed on you by someone else's schedule, that I didn't appreciate until it was gone. In retirement, the structure is yours to create, which sounds great, which is great in theory. But in practice, it means you have to make it up from nothing, which is harder than it sounds when you've never had to do it before. 46 years of structure given to you, and then one day you wake up and the day is a blank piece of paper. My dad had his fishing. He had his garage. He built his structure before he retired, so when the job structure disappeared, his own structure was there to fill the space. I didn't have that. I had to build it from scratch, in real time, while also adjusting to everything else that was happening. The walking group was part of the answer. I found it through the community center. Tuesday mornings, 8 o'clock, a bunch of women walking around the neighborhood talking about whatever. I showed up one Tuesday because I had nothing else to do on a Tuesday morning, and it turned out to be one of the better decisions I made in that first year. Having somewhere to be at 8 on a Tuesday, even for just an hour, gave the day something to build around. It's a small thing, but small things in the first year are the things that actually help. The fifth thing, and this one's a little harder to talk about, but I think it matters. The loneliness of retirement is real, and it's different from other kinds of loneliness. I'm going to say up front that I'm in a specific situation. I'm divorced, I live alone, my kids are not in the same city. Shelley is 45 minutes away, which is close by most standards, but that's not the same as having someone in the house with you. Kevin is in Cincinnati. I see him at Thanksgiving and in the summer. My sister Donna is in Akron, and we talk on the phone, but talking on the phone is not the same. And what I didn't understand before I retired was how much of my daily social life was happening at work. I spent 34 years at the dental practice with the same group of people. We talked every day, we knew each other's lives. I was closer to some of those people than I realized because the closeness just existed naturally inside the structure of the job. When the job ended, the structure that held those relationships together ended too. People reached out in the first few months, and then life kept going for them. They were still working, still in the rhythm, and I was on a different rhythm, and the calls got less frequent and then kind of stopped. I don't say that as a complaint, it's just how it works, and I didn't know that going in. The first time I spent a full weekend without talking to another person out loud, not counting the phone, was about 5 months in. I realize that sounds extreme, but I live alone, and if I didn't have something on the schedule, a whole weekend could go by with just me and the television and whatever was happening in the garden. And that was a lonelier feeling than anything I'd experienced before. I'm doing better with this now. The walking group helps. The YouTube channel, oddly enough, helps. It's given me something that functions almost like a community, which I did not see coming. Chloe told me the channel was actually kinda cool, and I mentioned it in a video, and the response was something I still don't fully understand, but the people who watch have been kind to me in ways that matter. But I want to be honest that the social piece of the first year was harder than the money piece, and the money piece was already harder than I expected. I don't think people talk about the loneliness part enough, especially for people who are doing this alone. I'm not going to tell you I've figured it all out. A year and a half in, and I'm still figuring. Some days are really good. The garden is growing. I have tomatoes this year that are actually producing, which surprised me more than it should have. The walking group on Tuesday mornings has become something I genuinely look forward to. Shelley comes for lunch every other week, and we sit at this table and talk about regular things, not retirement things, just life. Those days feel okay, more than okay sometimes. And some days, the quiet of the house at night still gets to me a little. And some days, I do the math on what's left in the checking account, and I feel that low-level anxiety that I've been working on managing. And some days, I watch something on TV that I don't particularly want to watch, and I don't feel guilty about it anymore, which is progress of some kind. But I'll say this, the first year was harder than I expected, and it was survivable. And on the other side of it, I understand things about my own life that I didn't understand before. That feels like something worth going through, even when it wasn't fun while I was in it. My dad made retirement look easy. I genuinely don't know if it was, or if he was just better at not showing the parts that weren't. I think about him more than I used to. I think he'd be amused by the YouTube channel. I think he'd have subscribed, which is more than I can say for Gary. All right, here's what I want to know from you. If you've been through your first year, or you're in it right now, what's the thing that surprised you most? Not the financial stuff, unless that's genuinely the biggest thing for you. The inside stuff. The emotional stuff, the Tuesday morning in the produce section feeling, the thing nobody warned you about. Leave it in the comments. I read every one of them, especially from people who are in the middle of it right now. It helps me know I'm talking about the right things. And honestly, it helps me feel a little less alone in all of this, which I think is the whole point of what we're doing here together. My brother Gary is 2 years out from retiring, and he calls me every Sunday and asks me questions. And I'm going to share this with him this week, whether he wants me to or not. Gary, you're not subscribed, and I know that, and I love you, and I'm telling you now, the crash is real, and it will probably happen to you, and it is survivable, and you will be okay. Write that down. And if you want to stick around for more of this, the real version, the numbers, the honest stuff, subscribe, and I'll keep going. I do this most weeks, whenever I have something worth saying. No schedule exactly, just when I've figured out something that seems worth sharing. All right, that's enough for me today. Talk to you soon.